Hey guys, welcome to MMA Dawgs. My name is Dan, and my dog Hector could not be here tonight. We had a scheduling conflict. We both watched the pay-per-view together, but he didn't get a chance to watch the prelims yet, and there's a lot I wanted to talk about on the undercard. So let's just get right down to it. UFC 158, George St-Pierre versus Nick Diaz. We did 8 video predictions for this fight, and we went 6-2 on our video picks. Both of us did, and I went 5-2 on my betting picks, and my dog Hector went 7-1 on his. We actually agreed on 9 out of all 12 fights, and we only lost on 2. So we went 7-2 together on combined picks, and combined betting picks we went 4-0. So that was pretty exciting also. Let's go ahead and start with the main event. George St-Pierre versus Nick Diaz. You know, this fight was pretty one-sided. There's a point in the third round where GSP was looking a little bit vulnerable to a possible TKO, but it wasn't as obvious as his last fight in the third round with Carlos Condit. And you know, Nick Diaz, he really didn't do enough. He did a lot of what Carlos Condit did tonight also, where whenever he was getting taken down, he wasn't trying to prevent the takedown, or he did later in the fight, but early on he was just going for, you know, submissions and stuff, and you really have to, when you're fighting guys like wrestlers like Hendricks and GSP, you really have to avoid the takedown altogether. You have to seriously try to keep it standing, because that's where you're going to be best at, and if they take you down, then you can worry about submissions. But there's no reason to go for a submission or set up a submission when you should be potentially avoiding the takedown. This fight, I had actually scored it 49-46. I gave the third round to Diaz, but you know, it's a title fight, and ultimately you have to arguably win rounds when you're going for the belt, and apparently the judges didn't see it that way. So congratulations, George St-Pierre. I was a little disappointed he didn't get a finish. Like everybody that picked him was thinking he was going to finish the fight, but it is what it is. For this fight, I was just very surprised on all the hype around Nick Diaz. I had a feeling, and I remember saying this before, I think I might have said it in our prediction video, that this fight was going to go a lot like Nick's brother Nate, his last fight against Ben Henderson back in December, was going to go. You know, it's just a one-sided beatdown. I would have liked to seen, you know, more of a pick 'em odds like that one was, but you know, it is what it is. So let's move on to the next one. Johny Hendricks defeats Carlos Condit via unanimous decision, 29-28. And this fight was awesome. It got fight of the night, and man, I really thought there was points in that fight where Carlos Condit was maybe 1 or 2 hits from getting flash knocked out, but he showed a chin. And you know, Johny Hendricks actually showed he can win a fight, arguably, even though he did look vulnerable throughout parts of the fight. You know, I really like Johny Hendricks, and I really like Carlos Condit. This was a really tough fight to call. And ultimately, I really thought that Johny Hendricks would knock out Carlos Condit, and you know, that first minute he almost did, and I'm sure a lot of people were scared. But you know, Carlos Condit has a tendency of getting taken down by wrestlers in his previous fights, and you know, I just saw Johny Hendricks, if he can't get the knockout, he's gonna get the decision, and ultimately that's what happened. I'm really excited to see Johny Hendricks versus George St-Pierre. That fight better be next, unless for some reason George St-Pierre fights Anderson, which doesn't sound like it's going to happen now. Let's move on to the next one. I'm just trying to make this really quick. I don't bring nearly as much energy when I'm not talking to my dog, so I'm just going to keep it short. Jake Ellenberger defeats Nate Marquardt, or Nate Marquardt is like I like to say it, by knockout in the first round. You know, this fight, this was one of the few fights of the night where I was looking at it yesterday. I almost changed my pick, and then I almost made it a betting pick. I remember in our prediction video I said, this is a do not bet on this fight, and I kind of like the odds for Nate Marquardt, so I was thinking maybe it might be a good betting pick. And then when I saw Jake Ellenberger at the weigh-ins, you know, I said, nah, do not bet on this fight. I stuck with my gut, do not bet. But I almost changed my pick to Jake Ellenberger, and had I done that, I would have got it. Part of my research, I also looked at Jake Ellenberger had fought twice in Canada before tonight and never left the first round. First round finish on his 2 previous opponents. So now he's got 3 first round knockouts in Canada, and I will probably pick him to knock out the next opponent he fights in Canada, Canadian or not. Chris Camozzi defeats Nick Ring via split decision 29-28, and apparently he lost in one judge's eyes 28-29. This fight, Nick Ring started off pretty quickly. This is a fight that Nick Ring could have easily won had he just had his hands up most of the time. I don't know what it was about him that made him keep his hands down. He kind of reminded me of Rafael Sapo Natal when he fought Andrew Craig. He was being really cocky about the way he was fighting, and it was kind of he was basically overhyping himself. And I saw this fight being really close like it was. I didn't see it being a split decision. The first round I gave it to Nick Ring. The second round I gave it to Camozzi by hair, and then the third round Camozzi, no doubt about it. And so I was a little bit surprised to see that one judge gave it to Nick Ring, considering. But you know what? He has stolen some decisions in the past. Yeah, but Chris Camozzi ultimately got the decision, and it was one of my betting picks. I was really excited to get this one, and it was a close decision, but a win's a win, and I'll take it, considering I usually lose split decisions that I don't think I deserve to lose. This was one that shouldn't have been a split decision in my opinion, so I'm glad I got it. Next fight, and the first fight of the night on pay-per-view, was Mike Ricci versus Colin Fletcher. I was very disappointed. Both these guys didn't look as hyped up as they were, especially Mike Ricci. This fight, 30-27, I can kind of see why, but I really wasn't that convinced on Mike Ricci, and I think he's overrated. Anybody that disagrees with that, just watch out if he fights somebody better, because he lost his last fight before tonight, and the fight tonight he really didn't show that much expectation that he's been hyped up for. So disappointing to see that one as a pay-per-view fight. Let's move on to the prelims. Patrick Cote versus Bobby Voelker. This fight was I was actually very surprised on the decision for this one. I had picked Patrick Cote to win this fight. I thought he was going to get a finish, and both guys almost finished at parts of this fight. It was an awesome fight. I was actually thinking this was going to be fight of the night until the Johny Hendricks Carlos Condit fight. This fight, even though I picked Patrick Cote to win this fight, I got to tell you, I scored this as 30-28 Bobby Voelker. And, you can disagree with me, that's fine. I'm glad Patrick Cote won. But I had the first round scored for Bobby Voelker, 10-9, just barely with the takedown and everything. And the second round, I was just like, oh man, I can't decide who to choose on this one. So I gave it a 10-10 for both guys. I couldn't figure out a winner of the second round. And the third round it seemed like it was all Voelker, and I'm pretty sure that's the round that all the judges gave him. But apparently, nobody gave him more than one round, and when you are facing the judges, you lose. Next fight, Darren Elkins versus Antonio Carvalho. This fight, oh man, I have to say, this fight was a little bit of a premature stoppage, but ultimately, the guy was probably going to get knocked out. It wasn't like a one-shot knockout. He was already hurt and then got dropped, and I've seen guys in worse trouble in this fight, in fights that didn't get stopped. So I was happy with the win, but I thought Darren Elkins was going to grind out a decision. Carvalho, he's good, but he's just not gonna last with higher competition. I'd like to see him come in a little more possessed, like when he fought Daniel Pineda. He just kind of squeaked by in his last fight, and this fight, I think, exposed that. The next fight, Jordan Maine versus Dan Miller. Wow. That's all I got to say about this one. This was another fight where I actually had originally picked, this was a tough one to pick, but I picked Jordan Maine, and then I changed my pick yesterday to Dan Miller. And, this fight was seriously, it looked like it was Dan Miller's fight to lose, and he lost. He basically had the fight. He had an arm bar early, and he looked like he was doing good the first minute or two of the fight, but then Jordan Main found his rhythm, and I was very surprised to see the newcomer in the UFC, such a heavy favorite, over the veteran who had only lost the top competition, but the fact that this guy stopped him when nobody else had, wow, props to Jordan Main in this fight. And I was disappointed on the outcome because I really wanted Dan Miller to win this fight, especially since I changed my pick on this. And so it was quite a bit disappointing. But it is what it is. And it was a betting pick also, but it was only 3 stars. So I just love the odds too much on that one to pass it up. The next fight, John Makdessi defeats Daron Cruickshank via 29-28 unanimous decision. This one was awesome too. It went a lot like the which fight was it? A lot like the Chris Camozzi Nick Ring fight, where it seemed like Cruickshank got the first round, and then Makdessi just turned on the jets later in the fight. The first round though was really, really tough to score. I'm pretty sure I could see either guy winning the first round, but the second round I gave it to Makdessi by a hair, and then the third round was all Makdessi. So I was really impressed with John Makdessi in the same way I was impressed with Chris Camozzi tonight, and I can't wait to see who he fights next. Next fight, Rick Story versus Quinn Mulhern. Another fight. I had Rick Story, and I changed my pick to Quinn Mulhern, and sure enough, I should have stuck with my original pick, and this Quinn Mulhern guy. Both these guys came out there and the odds were ridiculous on this one. Also, with Rick Story coming off of a loss to I would say top 3 at 170 now. Damian Maia, I would say that if he's not top 3, he's top 5, and he's definitely got a shot at, maybe Jake Ellenberger next or something. I would love to see that fight, with Jake Ellenberger's submission defense and all. So, getting off topic and everything. Quinn Mulhern, this guy, I couldn't believe this guy's record for the performance he put. He landed a couple soft jabs on Rick Story and kind of showed, to Rick. And Rick Story looked really flat-footed, and I was really not impressed with either guy in this fight. But ultimately, all it took was just a couple punches to the face, and this Quinn Mulhern guy, he gave up. It looked like he just gave up on this fight. He just laid down and I'm just gonna curl up in a little fetal position and until the ref stops the fight, and of course the ref's gonna stop the fight when they see that. Props to Rick Story for winning the fight. I'm really pissed I changed my pick to Quinn Mulhern, just like I'm pissed that I changed my pick to Dan Miller. So I would have got both those right, and I got them wrong. TJ Dillashaw defeats Issei Tamura by knockout in the second round. This one really, really quite funny. Because Tamura actually has been in 3 UFC fights, and the first one he knocked out the Mongolian Wolf, in the first minute of the second round, and now in this fight, in his last fight with Rafael Assunção, he got himself knocked out in the first minute of the second round. So I thought it was kind of funny that the guy just seems to have a finishing point, whether he loses or he wins so far in the UFC at the exact same point of the fight by a difference of 7 seconds. I say the first minute, but it's really only a margin of 7 seconds between all 3 fights. And so I thought that was kind of funny. TJ Dillashaw, the odds were ridiculous on this fight, and but I really liked what I saw with him. He was throwing this fake leg kick, and then he would look like he was going to throw a leg kick by looking down at his opponent's legs, and he would throw a high kick, and finally one landed. It didn't actually land flush from his foot though. It landed his knee actually rocked Demora before he ultimately got the stoppage on that one. But yeah, he looked awesome. I don't know if he looked minus 650 or whatever the ridiculous odds were, but he definitely deserved to be a high favorite in that one. And the first fight of the night was George Roop defeats Reuben Duran via decision. One judge gave him 3 rounds, and 2 judges gave him 2 rounds. Yes. So 29-28, 29-28, 30-27. And this fight, yeah, I totally had it scored 29-28 for George Roop. The first round, he got caught, sort of. And, Reuben Duran, I had picked him to win this fight. And he basically didn't capitalize on this fight at all. And because that was his opportunity to win the fight in the first round. He got the takedowns and everything, but he wasn't doing anything. And George Roop was just working off his back the whole time. So I definitely had it scored rounds 2 and 3 for George Roop. And then I said I could see a judge giving him the first round. And sure enough, one judge gives him the first round, and he lost the first round in the other 2 judges' eyes, but ultimately won the decision. So that wraps it up for the UFC 158 card tonight. I'm sorry I don't bring that much energy. Just when my dog's not here, I'm just not the same person, I guess. I just can't do the whole. I don't know. It's hard to talk and not get a response back live, I guess. So I apologize for that. I'm gonna try to work on that. One more thing I want to bring up before we finish up here. I'm really surprised though when I look at. Like some of these fights, like George Roop had been coming off like back-to-back injuries and a layoff, and he won. And who else somebody else tonight? I think won after a layoff. I think it might have been. Let me think. Who was it? It was. I think it was Bobby Voelker was coming off like a 2-year layoff, and in my opinion, he won that fight. Even though I'm glad that Patrick Cote won since I picked him to win. But what's up with all the guys winning fights after like long layoffs? Usually they come off of like an injury, or that's fine. Okay, they might win. But if you add the injury and the layoff, or a layoff, and any kind of other zigzag, Overeem last month almost beat Bigfoot, had that fight on the distance. 2 weeks ago in Japan, we saw Diego Sanchez steal a decision over Gomi after not fighting in a year. Mark Hunt, I couldn't even score that fight. If that fight went the distance, I couldn't even tell you who would have won that one. But he was coming off injury and a long layoff too. And I don't know what's up with these guys. I guess Nick Diaz coming off of a layoff for different reasons, obviously. Being suspended for not passing his test. But it's just kind of strange to me that all these guys seem to be winning when every now and then, a fluke might happen where they might win and stuff. But I really am very surprised to see that these guys haven't fought in so long, and they're fighting guys that have been way more consistent with what they've been doing, and they're able to defeat them. Sometimes it's controversial. Like, I still think Takanori Gomi beat Diego Sanchez, but apparently he did enough in the fight to win at least 2 rounds in the eyes of 2 judges. And that's all it takes to win a decision in the UFC. So I don't know what's going on or anything, but I really hope it doesn't continue, because it's getting harder and harder to predict MMA if that does happen. But you know what? We're doing pretty good. We've managed to keep our 65% average, I guess. You give a little bit or take a little bit from that, and it's getting exciting. I'm really excited for the next fight in Sweden in 3 weeks, and I'll actually be at the Ultimate Fighter finale in Vegas in the week after that. So I'm also excited for that. And we got 2 weekends off of UFC after this, and then at least four straight weekends of the UFC. So I'm really excited for that, but also it's going to be really overwhelming because we've got a lot of predictions to shoot in a short amount of time, and then we've also got our personal lives to live. So it's really going to be an interesting 6 weeks, I guess, coming up. So I'm really excited to see. And if you guys would please check out our website, MMADawgs.com. That's MMADAWGS.com. There we have our betting strategy, all of our predictions, including predictions we made on fights that we didn't shoot a video for or give a breakdown. And also, please check us out on Facebook and Twitter. We we just passed today 2,000 likes on Facebook, so I was really happy to see that. And so yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time.